Welcome to Video Games Weekly. I'm Paul Charchi, and my co-host is Reiner from Game Informer and GameInformer.com. Reiner, we've got not exactly new news anymore because the cat's been out of the bag for a week, but you are taking over as the new editor-in-chief of Game Informer.
That's right. Yeah, my first day was last Friday, and I ended up giving everybody the day off for the July 4th weekend, so I think I'm the best boss in the world already.
Yeah, you're one for one. It's been a couple of days since then. It's been all downhill.
Exactly.
You can't top Friday. Yes, that's great. Andy McNamara was the original editor-in-chief. Was he the only editor-in-chief in the history of the magazine? Was there somebody who preceded him?
Yeah, Elizabeth Olsen was the first editor-in-chief for, I want to say the first year and a half.
All right.
And then Andy took over, yeah.
I can't say I've ever heard her name before now, but that's all right.
It's a long time ago, Charch. That's like 30 years ago.
Exactly. She might be in a retirement home right now. I have no idea. Andy, of course, was the original co-host of this show with me and helped start Video Games Weekly, transition to Matt Helgeson, and now you, Reiner. You and I have been doing this like 5 years.
Yeah, it's
something like that.
Time flies.
It does fly.
I used to do an episode here or there, but yeah, after was it Matt that left? Yeah, Matt Helgeson left. I ended up taking over, and
which is
haven't
great.
missed many shows since.
All right, so Andy obviously leaves the magazine in a good place, but you have an opportunity, and the website, an opportunity to put your stamp on it. Anything you want to share with listeners about what you see coming from Game Informer or GameInformer.com that might be a little bit different, that might have a particular Reiner feel to it?
Yeah, we're going to try a lot of new things. Print, it's going to be a big celebration of games, really focusing in on the big games that are coming out and blowing them out as much as we can, like cover stories. Online, there'll be a lot of new video opportunities, stuff like that we're going to try as well. Live streaming, we're going to do a lot more of that. So, yeah, we're doing it collectively, though. The entire team's kind of putting this together, and I look forward to helping them find the rhythm and ingredients for success. Hopefully, I'm really eager to help out and do what I can.
Yeah, and I've noticed the real increase in video content at GameInformer.com, and I think that's something that will ultimately be very beneficial. And the reality of video games is it's a visual medium. Even though we're talking about video games on the radio, so you can't see the games we're talking about. There's just there's something that sort of crystallizes some of the video games just by seeing it. That I think makes video especially well suited, and I like to see all the new video that you guys are doing.
And it could just be, people don't want to read anymore. So,
I'm a willing reader, but yes.
Yeah. I mean, generations down the road, everything might be visual or, like Twitter, like 180 characters or whatever.
Hey, speaking of some new and interesting things, you teased something last week that I want to come back to. Mm-hmm. You guys are doing something really special with the print edition of Game Informer this week with Cyberpunk 2077 on the cover. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, so we're doing augmented reality. So we have an AR code on the cover that when you scan it with your phone or tablet, whatever you use, the cover comes to life, and you can actually, almost like a newspaper from Hogwarts, right? You can zoom in, using your phone, lean around characters, see another character, they'll interact with you. It has kind of like the HUD elements from the game itself. So you feel like you're kind of seeing it through the lens of the game. It's very cool.
Wow.
And the first time we've ever done that, and now every publisher I talk to, it's like, yo.
Yeah, we'd like to do that. Now,
let's have our cover come to life.
CD Projekt Red must have come to you with this idea, right? I mean, I assume you guys aren't building your own AR application for this.
No.
But they are.
They came to us, and we talked to them about it, and we're like, yeah, let's partner. Let's see if we can make this work. And it ended up being very cool. I can't wait for people to get it in their mailboxes. It should be any day.
I was going to say, I'd really like to get this and check this out, but hopefully soon, maybe today.
Trucks are on the way, yeah.
Yeah, that's super cool. And, speaking of Andy Mack, he tweeted something about a week ago about how CD Projekt Red, when they were pitching Witcher 3 as a cover concept, they built you guys a prototype magazine of Game Informer. That's pretty brilliant, too.
Yeah, they came in prepared, and this is before they were like a big deal, right? They had success with Witcher 1 and 2, obviously, and we're doing fairly well to, make this gargantuan game in Witcher 3. But they came in with different cover concepts, and then it wasn't a actual Game Informer magazine they made, but it was a Game Informer themed kind of art book, and inside is just all this concept art from Witcher 3.
Super cool. Those guys get it, man. It's funny how virtually every episode of Video Games Weekly, it ends up coming back to Cyberpunk 2077 eventually. Some way, some form, it does. Well, congratulations on the new bit.
Thank you,
Editor in Chief. We look forward to seeing how you put your stamp on the magazine and website. Coming up in 2 weeks, we've got the Xbox Game Showcase.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is Microsoft's next attempt to pass along some information about the Xbox Series X and build some excitement for it. The last time they did this in May was a pretty big flop, and mostly we were looking at cutscenes and CGI, and there wasn't a lot of real firm information about the Xbox Series X. And honestly, they took some criticism for it. Microsoft did. They acknowledged the criticism. What do you want to see, and what do you think we're going to get out of this new Xbox Games Showcase coming in 2 weeks?
I want to see them do exactly what Sony did with PlayStation 5. Show off your first-person games or your first-party games in a big way.
Mm-hmm.
Show us why the Xbox Series X matters. I want to see these games doing things we haven't seen before, like Sony's Ratchet and Clank game, where they were, tearing those portals open and just loading in new environments in a split second. Like, we haven't seen a game move that fast before, right? Like, technology be able to load environments that fast. Show me why Xbox Series X is something I'm going to need to buy, especially since all of the games that you're releasing, including Halo Infinite, can also be played on Xbox One, the previous generation machine. Why do I need to upgrade?
Mm-hmm.
Talk about that. Go in depth. Really show off why these new machines matter.
Yeah, we want to know what I can't do now on my Xbox One that I'll be able to do on my Series X. And they've talked about it in the abstract, but nobody's really showing that. And even the PlayStation, I don't think it's shown uber compelling reasons yet. But I hope to see more of that coming. And, some of the things I think just are going to be modest gameplay differences that are a little bit harder to see. How about this idea for Microsoft? At the outset, they say every single thing you're going to see today is real gameplay inside the engine. There are no cutscenes. There's no CGI. I would love to see the whole thing kick off that way, that everything is in engine.
Yeah, everything's in engine. Walk us through the lighting that's being used. Get really tech dorky with this too.
Yeah.
Seriously, tell us why this is better than it is on Xbox One.
Like that NVIDIA tech demo that we got that looked sort of like a Tomb Raider demo a couple of months ago. Super dorky and so cool and beautiful. That's what I would love to see, something like that.
And then from first party, wow me as well. Like, we're coming off Xbox One, where I think the first party was a little lacking.
For sure.
They invented Game Pass and unleashed that upon the world. The best deal in video games.
It is.
Where you get to play all of Microsoft's first party games. There's some good stuff there. Gears of War, Ori, stuff like that.
Oh, Horizon. There's a ton. At this stage, there's a ton of great stuff from it, going back 5 and 6 years through the catalog of Xbox One.
But really wow me with what you have. People want to see a new Fable. That would be great if that was there.
Well, that's been rumored. I mean, look, we should probably touch on that, right? So the Fable Twitter account has been activated by somebody with a Microsoft email address. So there's a lot of speculation that we're going to get a Fable announcement here, which would be pretty big, right?
Oh yeah, huge. That would be I mean, I think they need to have like 5 or 6 games that really impress, right? Like, and they can be third parties that are maybe timed exclusives or from first party itself.
Yeah. And I think that Halo Infinite is an untapped resource for them because they haven't done and showed all that much about it yet. And I think there's a real opportunity here to turn that into a massive flagship that, is very, very important for them. And, the Halo brand is incredibly valuable, but I don't think there's any. I'm not sensing any real buzz for Infinite or that they've done much with it. Do you think this is? Do you think we're going to get a lot of Halo Infinite here?
I do. I hope they begin the show with it, and I hope they end the show with it. I want to see that much of Halo. They've shown it in the past a couple times. There was a teaser trailer a couple of E3s ago, and then they showed us like in-engine graphics from Xbox One or Xbox Series X, but it was just Master Chief inside of a ship, right? Like you're not really getting much of a look at what this tech can do, especially with like a big, huge world and a war erupting on it, right? Like we want to see that. I'm hoping we see that. I'm also hoping we see what they want to do with multiplayer. I think outside of just tech and showing what these new machines are capable of, people want to know what one of the biggest franchise in gaming is up to, especially after coming off a game that many people thought was rather lackluster, right? The Halo 5 Guardians, took the story in a weird place. Multiplayer was, criticized. They fixed it a bunch. Let's see if they get it right. Let's see if they've been listening and really understand what the player base wants from the next Halo.
Yeah. How about this for the Xbox Game Showcase? Again, coming up in 2 weeks. How about a price? And how about a date? Do you believe that we're finally going to get a first mover on a price announcement?
I don't know about price, but I do think maybe we get first movement on date. Mm-hmm. I think there's, both of them are probably looking at a day in November, if I had to guess.
Yeah, I do too.
That they're going to, kind of put their flag on and say this is when we're coming and have kind of the crater effect around it, like don't release anything around it. I could see Microsoft leading the charge there. I don't think we're going to hear price from either Sony or Microsoft until we get much closer to launch.
We talked last week about a potential that there's going to be two different Xbox Series X consoles at launch. One of them is the normal Series X, and then there's another one that we believe is going to be a less powerful version that's designed mostly. Really, the key difference is it won't support 4K. It's going to be a standard high def box, so they don't have to put as much hardware and processing power into it, and it'll be cheaper. And do you believe that announcement will be here as well? That we'll find out about the second Xbox?
I do, and if it isn't there, then I question if this thing even exists, right? Like, it seems like if they're going to do what Sony's doing with having two different models at launch, we need to learn about it now. Otherwise, it's just not going to happen until maybe next year or the year after, right? Like maybe it's super far out, and they just want to lead with this super powerful new console.
Yeah, which it is powerful, and we are very excited to see it for sure. Reiner, let's take a break. And again, by the way, I'll mention it one more time. The Xbox Game Showcase is coming July 23rd, 11 o'clock Central Time. We should have a lot more answers than we had last time. They can model themselves after more of what Sony showed us before. And we'll learn hopefully a little bit more about the Series X and get our arms around that. If you had to make a call right now, and I think this is what's going through the mind of a lot of listeners, and you don't have to worry about it, Reiner, but most of us aren't going to buy at launch both the Series X and the PS5. If you had to buy one based on what you know today, and the right to change your mind all the way up to November when these launch, but just based on what you know today, which one would you buy?
If you could only buy one on day one, it's PlayStation 5, because Microsoft already told you don't need to have the new console to buy the new games. Mm-hmm. You could play those on Xbox One, whereas Sony's gone the other way, where there are games developed exclusively for PlayStation 5. So right there, it just in that mindset, you want to be able to play everything, right?
Yeah.
All the big stuff.
Yep.
Hey, you could do that on Xbox One. Just keeping your hardware you've had for, almost a decade. You could still use that.
You could.
Whereas Sony's playing the old card of how console launches went, where it's like it's the end of a generation. You need to upgrade if you want to play the new stuff. And I think that's the easy solution on day one. But down the road, we'll see, right? Like Game Pass is awesome. Microsoft said eventually games will move only onto Series X and the newer hardware. And again, if they show us in this event what these machines are capable of, maybe there's more to Series X than we know.
Yeah.
So we'll have to wait and see. But just from how they're delivering games and what they play on, it seems like Sony's the one that you're going to need to get if you want to play everything.
All right, we'll take a break. When we come back, I want to talk about the Fallout TV show. Oh, man. Very, very exciting, especially when you look at the people that are involved in it. Man, it looks so promising. We'll talk about that. We've got some VR news, Animal Crossing, Pokemon Go, and which completely dead franchise needs a rebirth. All that and more coming in the next 2 segments of Video Games Weekly.
Near you.
Welcome back to Video Games Weekly. Paul Charch and Reiner from Game Informer and GameInformer.com with you. Fallout is coming as a TV show. Oh, man. Reiner, I'm so excited about this. Now, I would be skeptical, but one, Amazon is behind it, and I have reason to believe that Amazon has all the money they need to throw at this. And number 2, the people behind it include Jonathan Nolan, Christopher Nolan's brother, who wrote Memento and Interstellar and the Batman series of movies and Westworld and a variety of other shows. Have you seen Westworld, by the way?
Yes, I loved the first season. Then it went
did too.
Off the rails.
I agree totally. Loved the first season, and then it went off the rails. So then I love the people that are attached to this as well. This seems like a fantastic opportunity to bring Fallout to our big screens in a way that we haven't had before. What do you want to get out of the show, and what's your level of excitement for this?
I think excitement's through the roof. This is a universe that is just primed for TV, right? Not to use Prime
right,
Amazon,
right.
But it is, just this post-apocalyptic world that people are trying to survive in and trying to rebuild in. Yeah, it's the most dangerous, place that you can imagine. Like, you have these kind of relics of yesteryear. You're going into DC, you're seeing all the museums and all of the shrines and all that stuff, but it's all ravaged. It's all been torn down, and I think it just visually this is going to look great. I don't know if they can do the blue and yellow jumpsuits. I know a lot of people like buying those and wearing them, just as fans. Well,
they have to, games. Right? I mean, they're iconic.
Well, I think they gotta maybe dumb down the colors a little bit.
Maybe so. It's maybe so. I love that to build this world right is going to take an incredible amount of money and CGI and effects and the sets to make it look right. And I just feel like Amazon, and looking at the people they've brought in, it sounds like the commitment level to bringing Fallout to TV is really high, both financially. I mean, you're not getting Jonathan Nolan to stop doing movies if you're not fully in to bring the Fallout world, to fully realize the Fallout world.
It could be a matter of fact of, okay, we can't have our actors together. What universe lets us put them in masks that's believable?
They can be working masks.
There's nuclear fallout everywhere, so we'll just have our actors in masks for the majority of the show, and it's a win-win. People love this universe.
Now, do you want it to tell the same stories we saw in the video games, many of which are very good stories, or do you want to see all new Fallout stories that aren't necessarily connected to any of the characters or any of the things that happened in the actual video games themselves?
I think you start with a new vault. And for people that don't know what Fallout is, every game begins with your character who you create coming out of a vault, and they're all numbered, right?
Yeah.
There are these Fallout shelters that people hunkered down in when the bombs fell, and then years later, decades later in some cases, they come out, right? Like, these societies eventually emerge to the surface, and they're numbered. So some of the famous ones, there's Vault 77, Vault 101 or whatever. There's a bunch of them.
Yeah.
You just pick a new number, have new characters, because your character's created, so any actor you have, is not going to line up with what people know. And then you can tell some of those old stories, have a new voyeur, a new kind of perspective observing these stories that the player interacted with. I think that's how you achieve that. So that would mean location is maybe where you start, right? I think you start with Washington D.C. like Fallout 3.
Yeah, I'd be fine with that. And seeing some of the iconic sites of Washington post-apocalypse, fascinating. And I think it's compelling. You know, when you see, you know, the Washington Monument in ruins, it's, you know, it really does. It strikes you in a way that you might not otherwise.
That would be more expensive in terms of CG and building these sets, whereas you could do something like Fallout 76, not that game. Nobody wants to touch that, obviously, but being in a countryside or something like that, where maybe it's a little bit easier to and cheaper to shoot in the wilderness.
Did you see Fallout 76 is on Xbox Game Pass now?
Yeah, I mean, they're doing everything they can to get people to play that.
Doing everything they can to get people. You're exactly right.
And they added seasons to it, like kind of battle pass, but you don't pay for them. Yeah. So there's like a tier of rewards that you're going through. Well,
you know, for better or worse with Bethesda, man, they don't give up on a bad idea. If it's whether it's Blades, the Elder Scrolls Blades disaster that's on, you know, every device known to mankind, and nobody plays it and nobody likes it, or if it's Fallout 76, they're not going to just give up. If they've got a bad idea, they're going to double down on it, then they're going to triple down on it, quadruple down on it. That's Bethesda.
You got to like that, though, because it's all trying to make good. It's trying to improve the product, trying to make it what people want it to be.
Okay, some
things are unsalvageable, though.
Yes, exactly. I mean, sometimes, like, look at Anthem. Sometimes you just go, you know what? We're so far away from where we need to go. Let's just forget it. Last thing on the Fallout television show. How about a different lead character? How about a female? How about an Asian? How about an Indian? I mean, how about, something that feels really different from what we've mostly played in the past. I think that'd be an interesting hook that we haven't necessarily seen.
Yeah, I agree. This is a chance for them to do something different with the franchise, and I'd love to see that happen.
Yeah, it'd be fun. Let's talk about a couple of games that I know are close to your heart. Pokemon Go. It's now 4 years ago was when Pokemon Go came out, and it was a massive, massive societal hit. It's still going strong, and according to some recently released reports, Pokemon Go has grossed $3.5 billion for a, quote, free game. So tell people, what's the money-making formula for Pokemon Go, and why has it remained vibrant 4 years later when most games are dead 4 months later?
Yeah, so it's a free-to-play game. It's something you check in with multiple times a day. You are, seeing what's in the wild, what you're catching, and then also you are walking eggs. So you're hatching Pokemon from these eggs, and what you need to do is incubate them. So you use these incubators. They give you one, but you can have 9 eggs at any given time. So
they have to buy the other incubators.
When they have rare Pokemon at certain times that are going to hatch from eggs, people buy more incubators.
So they can hatch these faster, more of them and faster.
Yep. You also have an item bag which fills up very quickly. Well, guess what? You can expand the size of that item bag by spending coin or real money on it.
Yeah.
You can also, you're going to catch a bunch of Pokemon if you've been playing for years. Guess what? Your Pokedex has limited space. You need to expand the size of that. So there's some legacy systems in place that, you just need to keep building out the amount of storage that you have. Mm-hmm. That costs real money or coins, and you only get coins by placing Pokemon on gyms, right? So you have to do this thing, and then you earn maybe 50 coins a day. To buy storage space, you need to have a Pokemon on a gym for 4 times, right, to get 200 gold. That takes time. A lot of people don't do that. They just go in there and spend $5 on gold.
Yeah.
And then they also have recently started doing events where you have to buy a quest for $1 or $5 or $7.
Okay.
So there's a lot of ways that they're making money off you, but it's still just a fun game. And they've, with the COVID-19 or pandemic going on, they have found ways to. This is one of the most social games out there. They found ways to embrace social distancing, right? Now you're able to hit gyms from your living room.
Yeah.
More Pokemon are spawning around you. They're giving you free items. They're doing everything they can to make sure you're not going around other players.
Okay. And so has the gameplay in Pokemon Go changed much since when it first launched? Because I remember when it first launched, I talked about this topic a ton. The gameplay was super thin at the time. And we just said, you know what, it'll probably get better over time. They'll probably add in more sophistication to the gameplay. Has the core gameplay of Pokemon Go actually improved much?
Yep, you have missions you're going on, like I said, and they can sometimes be pretty easy and quick. You finish within an hour. Other times, maybe they take you a couple days.
Yeah.
There's also Battle League, where you're battling other trainers and kind of matching up elements and still tapping the screen as fast as you can. They haven't gotten rid of that element, but they do have that. So you have like a ranking system. You can team up with other players to take down these big bosses on gyms. There's a lot more to do than was there at launch. Maybe too much if you're trying to check in on everything you can do in a day. They have you doing like 5 or 6 different things. You got a buddy Pokemon you got to walk and interact with. There's a ton there, but it's still fun. I love it. I play it religiously still, and Pokemon Go Fest is right around the corner, by the way, the new one, at the end of July, and they were usually held in Chicago.
Yeah, in person in Chicago.
But now, since COVID-19, you can't do that. You're going to be doing it from anywhere in the world. So you just have to buy the pass. I think it's either $10 or $20. I don't know what it is, for 2 days of catching rare Pokemon and going on a new quest which will end with getting a mythical Pokemon, which are really hard to find in the game.
All right. So you're guaranteed of that?
Yep.
Okay. Animal Crossing launched at the very start of the pandemic and felt like the perfect antidote for all the anxiety of the times. And since then, Reiner, and by the way, one of the most successful launches in the history of Nintendo first-party products. Incredibly popular. Over 15 million people are playing it. It's done exceedingly well. I got bored of it within about 3 or 4 weeks, and I haven't touched it since then. Tell me what's happening in the world of Animal Crossings that might be a reason to go pick it back up again.
So they keep adding new content to it, just like we talked about with Pokemon Go. They're moving at a pretty quick pace for updating the game. We had our Easter event, and now we have the summer event where they've added swimming to the game. So you could go out into the ocean and look for different things that you can catch in the water. The big moneymaker is going to be finding pearls, but you're also catching eels and octopi and algae and stuff like that, and seaweed, everything you could find in the ocean. There's like 40 things you can get. And when you catch them, you can either sell them or bring them to your museum, which has an aquarium in it. So
I can stock the aquarium a little bit.
Yeah, with more stuff, which is cool, right? So it's a new wrinkle to the game. It's a new activity that you can do that expands the size of it. And I really think they're kind of settling in. This is a long-running game series, Animal Crossing for Nintendo. Yeah. But I think they're really settling in for this to be kind of like a forever game, right? Like this is going to keep going for years and years. I don't think we're going to hear a hint of a sequel anytime soon. I think
so what's in it for them? So they've sold a jillion copies of Animal Crossing, and it's way, way, way in the black, and they got a lot of money from this, right? Mm-hmm. But if you fast forward a year from now or 2 years from now, they're not making more money on it. There's not DLC for this. They're not charging for all these updates.
Not yet. Yeah.
Do you think they will eventually move to a monetized system for DLC, or do you think they're just going to be out of the kindness of their hearts? And they've got so much money and goodwill that they're just going to keep giving us free updates?
I think it's going to be like World of Warcraft, where you get the big expansions. You still get the seasonal stuff and all that fun stuff, but then there'll be the big things that maybe you got to pay for. That's what they're doing that. They did that with Zelda. They're doing that with Pokemon right now, the new Pokemon Sword and Shield game, where they have big timed expansions that are coming out.
Yeah.
That seems to make sense to me. Like just a nice way to keep adding to the game, keeping it alive, giving you enough free stuff where you feel like, there's just a constant flow of things to do, and then introducing new experiences with these expansions.
That's Animal Crossing.
That's just me thinking out loud, by the way, but that's what I think they're settling into. It seems like.
That could make sense. When we come back, two things I want to be sure to get to, and maybe a little bit more if we have time. One, we've got some pretty big potential news in the world of VR. And then number two, what's the one completely dead franchise that needs a rebirth? And when I say completely dead, I mean, I'm talking like 20 years dead. I don't want to hear about something from 6 years ago that's ready. I want something that hasn't seen a game in 20 years. But if they did a rebirth of the game now, you think would be awesome and successful. I'll ask Reiner about that. We'll give you our topics when we come back. Video Games Weekly.
Into the fan.
Welcome back to the final segment of Video Games Weekly. Paul Charch and Reiner with you. I want to spend most of this segment, Reiner, on which completely dead video game franchise most needs a rebirth. But first, for those of us that are staying in tune with VR, we've got a pretty big story developing from Australia. The developer of L.A. Noire that did, not the company that ported L.A. Noire to VR. And L.A. Noire has been ported to everything, like the Switch, and it's been ported to VR now. And this is the company that did it for Rockstar. Keep in mind, Rockstar owns L.A. Noire, and Rockstar did L.A. Noire. The company says that they're working on a AAA VR game for Rockstar. Now, this is a small Australian company called Video Games Deluxe. There's no way they, on their own, are creating a from-scratch AAA VR game, Reiner, for Rockstar, right? So, in all probability, it means they are porting an existing Rockstar title, AAA title, to VR. So, Reiner, are you ready for GTA 5 in virtual reality?
That would be amazing. Or even Red Dead.
Or Red Dead
Redemption.
Yes.
Like either one of those games in VR would just be ridiculous. I don't know if they can put the entire game in there or if it'd just be kind of like snapshots from it. But boy, seeing those universes from that viewpoint would be incredible.
It would. I think Red Dead, it would be even better, to be honest. Maybe because I think it's a better game.
Just horseback riding in VR?
I think that'd be all right. I just, I'm thinking of all those pastoral scenes and everything. I'd like to be in that. It'd be great. I think it's coming. And what's funny is how many different platforms and ways has GTA made it to at this point, right? I feel like, it's going to be one of those games where people end up buying it 4 times. And maybe that's going to be, they're finding ways to continue to milk money out of that game, 6 years later. After launch.
I mean, they kicked off the Sony PS5 press conference with Grand Theft Auto 5.
Yeah.
Like, it's coming to PS5 in a new way. I would not be surprised if it's coming to VR as well. And maybe Sony has a new VR system that they introduce a year down the road or something like that. And guess what? Grand Theft Auto 5.
It's supported. Yeah, right. It could very well be that way. Congratulations to them on being able to milk more money out of that. Let's talk about the completely dead franchise that you think most needs a reboot. And I'm saying this has got to be a 20-ish year old franchise or game that you think if they remade it today using everything you've got at your disposal now that we didn't have 20 years ago, give me a great game that you think that people would love if it came back.
I'm going to go with the old PlayStation 1 game, one of the first kind of RPGs on PlayStation 1 called Blood Omen Legacy of Kain.
Legacy of Kain. Oh, it was so good.
Developed by Silicon Knights, published by Crystal Dynamics, who ended up stopped being a publisher and ended up becoming a developer.
Yeah.
And they made the sequels Soul Reaver and Soul Reaver 2. There was other Legacy of Kain games that came later that were not as good. But Blood Omen Legacy of Kain did something different. It kind of had a Zelda vibe to it, right? It was isometric, top-down viewpoint. And at the time, what was really crazy about it was designed with adults in mind. It was written like a novel.
Yeah.
And you played as an anti-hero. You actually played as the vampire in this. You were a nobleman of this fictional world called Nosgoth. It's very medieval-esque in its architecture and vibe. And you end up being resurrected as a vampire, and guess what? You do everything that vampires do.
Yes, mercilessly.
Oh, yes. You'll go into a town, you'll drink the blood of humans. That's how you regain health. or even in a dungeon, you'll see someone chained up and you can suck their blood from like 10 feet away. And it's like, almost looks like a fire hose ejecting water, right?
It does.
It's just like all the blood in their body just flies through the air, in this perfect stream and then enters your body.
Yeah.
But you had to be careful who you drank because there was undead, their blood would hurt you. And then what was the other one? I can't remember. Oh, demons would poison you. So you could drink their blood, and get a little health back, but there would be a downside to it as well.
I'm looking at old gameplay from Legacy of Kain. Again, you're going back many, many years for this game. The graphics were so bad because it's a PS1 3D game, right? The 3D games on the PS1 mostly did not look good, but it has the graphics have not aged well. But at the time, I remember thinking the graphics were very good, and it brought a bunch of new things to the table. And I think one of the things you really touched on is it told a very adult, grown-up story, as the vampire mythology really is very adult in many ways. And I liked that part of it. It didn't feel like a kid's game.
Yeah, and they would have narration, like so you'd hear your character talking about things. And if you know how you play a Zelda game where you move in a dungeon from screen to screen, if your character's talking when you try to leave the screen, it just brings up a load wheel and you have to wait for the dialogue to end. Yes. And then it'll transition over. And that could be like 20 to 30 seconds where you're just like, I want to go kill the boss. Stop talking. Let's go.
Right. Simple UI stuff, right? That, and quality of life stuff that we just take for granted now. You also had a sword. You didn't have to suck the blood of everybody. You had a sword so you could kill other creatures.
Yep.
But it also had a lot of puzzle stuff to it. As I'm watching the videos, moving blocks around and some platforming to make jumps just right. Stuff like that was in Legacy of Kain that, honestly, mostly I just remembered all the blood sucking.
Yeah, and in the Zelda games, you'd get a bomb and then the bow and arrow. You get different, the bridge, different powers like that. In this one, they had a similar idea, but true to like the vampires, you could transform into a wolf, a bat, a cloud of mist. The wolf would jump gaps. The mist can pass through grates. The bat allows you to fast travel. Like they used those mechanics in really interesting ways that kind of synced up with the vampire lore, but also made for fun gameplay and opened up new areas of the game. Right.
My game that I want to see, dead franchise, that I want to see get rebirth is Ultima. Now, are you, I'm a little bit older than you, but you're old enough to remember Ultima, right?
I played it on Amiga way back when.
Nice. Yep, yeah. Apple II here. So the story of Ultima going way back to the early Apple II days is pretty fascinating. So this kid, he's 18 years old, and he's selling Apple II computers at a computer store in Texas. And he decides that the games that are out stink. And he's right. The games that are out do stink. So he decides he's going to write his own video game using Apple Basic that's built into the Apple II. And he ends up writing what would ultimately become the precursor to Ultima. And he just sells it at the store. And it ends up catching the attention of some other people, and this game turns into a mini hit for him. And then he spends the next 2 years building what would become Ultima 1. Now, the kid is named Richard Garriott, who is now super famous. He goes by the name Lord British. But when this game came out, when Ultima 1 came out in 1981, it shattered the RPG landscape. It did so many firsts, it's hard to even describe them at the time. Keep in mind, in 1981, Reiner, half of the games that were out were text-only games.
Yeah. Imagine that.
I know, hard to believe. So this was a top-down graphics where you're traveling around the map, and then when you went into the dungeon, it would switch the orientation to first-person orientation in the dungeon. And you'd go like tile at a time, like 10 foot at a time, 10 foot at a time, and it would rescale the dungeon for you and move you through a dungeon. Tons of character choice. You could pick your gender, your race, your class, stuff that's all standard now but hadn't been done then. Randomly generated stats, real character progression, tons of loot. And you could buy weapons and armor, find weapons, find armor. So many things that we just take for granted now that was being done first by the Ultima series. And back in the mid 80s, and again, I'm a young kid then, when these new Ultimates came out, it was like Call of Duty now.
Oh, yeah.
It absolutely huge. Cratered everything around it. That was, you couldn't wait for the new Ultima to come. It was, it ended up being 3 separate trilogies, so 9 different games that spanned from 1981 all the way to 1994. And the first trilogy was mostly just good guy versus evil bad guy. And then it got more sophisticated in the second trilogy because it centered a lot on alignment and good and bad choice. And then the third trilogy was notable, Reiner, because they scrapped the old engine entirely. And now here it is, we're in the early 90s, and now we've got mouse support, a totally new engine, way, way, way better graphics. Movements stop being these tile-based chunking 10 feet at a time, tile-based movements. And so it sort of just ultimately kind of died out, I think, out of maybe a lack of interest. Maybe it didn't keep up with the times, but the Ultimate games were so big in the old days. What do you remember from the Ultimate games back then?
Just the freedom of exploration and customization, allowing you just kind of go into a town, loot stuff, like design your character the way you wanted, and then just go on these grand adventures, like you find a dungeon or something like that. And just spending hundreds of hours on that first game alone, I think. I mean, I played that like you wouldn't believe. And each entry that came out, you're totally right. Like, it was a huge event.
Mm-hmm.
And Ultima Underworld, I think that was the one where everybody's like, okay, the series is back. It's moving in the right direction. But then they ended up going Ultima Online, which, in the history of games is the first MMO RPG, considered, the first truly successful MMO RPG.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But it also, I think, killed Ultima.
I think you're right. I mean, I think it really put all of the focus on their online game. And it was, Ultima Online was very successful for its time. And there were people that absolutely loved the idea that you could play in an online world with hundreds of other people at one time, which back then, this is still the dial-up days. Back then was a really big deal, and I think you're right that really changed the focus of the Ultima series away from the standard games and into Ultima Online. Now, a couple of things I'll mention while we're talking about Ultima Online that were super cool. One, when you bought the boxed game, they all had a cloth map of the universe, and they were so cool. And I wish I had kept all my cloth maps. And eventually, I punted all that stuff and foolishly. And then you'd get different knickknacks in the box. So that was really cool and something we just don't get anymore. We don't even get printed, we don't even get a printed copy of the directions anymore, right?
Right.
When you buy a box, you either get just the disc by itself, or you get a piece of paper with a code on it to redeem. That's it. That's all you get anymore. Back then,
collector's editions.
Unless you get the collector's
tons
edition.
of stuff. But
that's right.
These were standard editions. Every edition came with all this stuff.
Right. Now, the Ultimate games also gave Richard Garriott so much clout and money that he was able to start his own publishing company, Origin Systems, which ended up doing a ton of notable stuff. Not only the Ultimate games, but Wing Commander, which was absolutely huge in the 90s, System Shock, which we talk about all the time, Auto Duel, which is one of my favorite early RPGs, the Crusader series, which I think would be great for a remake as well. So a bunch of different games that came out of that. And Origin was a launching point for a bunch of key careers like Warren Spector and Chris Roberts and John Romero were all people that worked on these early games.
I thought you were going to say that it gave him so much money that he launched himself into space.
That too.
Because, this guy, seriously, he puts his mind to anything, Richard Garriott. I'm selling these computers, the games stink. You know what? I'm just going to make them. I'll just make the best game ever at the time.
Right.
And then it's like, oh, astronauts are cool. I'm going to be one of those. And guess what? He is. He's gone to space.
What a life.
Crazy.
He built a castle and lives in a castle, or did at one point anyway. I don't know if he still does. But why would you leave, I guess, if you can build your own castle? So Ultima, I think, would work. I'd love to see it just come back. It had a lot of good elements to it from its day, and it's a still beloved series for old guys like me. And I'd love to see Ultima come back, which would be, man, it'd be a ton of fun to have that game and that that series come back, and especially because of all of the choice-based stuff that it introduced in the late 80s and early 90s, that, we're still marveling over games that have real choice in it and difficult choices. And they were doing it way back then. Talk to me, Reiner, about this oddball Atari console that's coming. In the world of these, like the Sega consoles that have come out and the Nintendo throwback consoles, these mini consoles that have come out, and they're like $50 or like $70 or $40, and they come preloaded with a bunch of games. There's an Atari version of it coming out, but it's $400 and it does like a bunch of stuff, and I don't really understand it. I know I can play like Centipede and Asteroids on it, but nobody's paying $400 for that. So what is this thing?
It's coming in October, which is the last place you want to be when you have PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X coming out very soon, right?
Yeah, at $400. At
$400,
you're competing directly against them.
But it is a console PC hybrid. It's an open platform machine powered by AMD Ryzen and Radeon graphics technology. So it's not too shabby in terms of tech.
Sounds like a computer to me.
Yes, and you could stream all sorts of stuff on it. Netflix, Disney Plus, Stadia, stream it at 4K. The controller looks a lot like the Xbox one, but you can also buy the throwback Atari 2600 joystick with the one button.
Ugh.
It's like a newly designed version of it, but I mean, it's a stick with a button. And you use that to play games like there's like, I think 80 plus classic games on there, like Centipede, Breakout, Asteroids, Tempest, Adventure.
Okay, yeah, but I'm not paying $80 to play those games. Or sorry, I'm not paying $400 to play throwback games from the 1970s. No chance. So I guess I'm not totally clear on what this Atari thing is. Is it?
I'm not yet either.
I mean, there's
a lot of questions we have.
Can I load Steam on it? Can I throw Steam games on it?
I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, I'm confused by it.
I am too. Like, it seems like it's such a weird thing. It looks cool because it has that retro aesthetic to it.
Yeah.
But $400, like $100, I would have been like, all right, that's interesting. But $400 is a tough pill to swallow, and I'm curious to see like what this thing ends up having when it launches in October. That's a lot of money for just classics.
It's the Atari VCS, and yeah, I just don't get it, and maybe it's just we need to learn more. But man, it feels like this thing is gonna die a brutal death. We'll find out. I guess, whether or not we're right on this thing, but they need to explain what that is a little better. Speaking of things that I thought, well, and maybe things that I thought would die a death, but really aren't dying quite yet, and we've only got about 1 minute left. Sea of Thieves launched 2 years ago to middling reviews and a lot of disinterest, and yet I see you tweeting that you're still playing it, and I know, and I've seen all these news on it. They've got new content coming. This Sea of Thieves has been a shocking sort of resurrection story for Microsoft.
Yeah, I don't like playing it with my kind of hardcore gamer friends, right? Like the people that play Overwatch and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But my daughter is way into this, and I'm playing it with my girlfriend and her sons as well, and it is so much fun as a family game. Yes, it's got kind of the pirate theme, and you're drinking grog and throwing up off the side of the ship. But you could tell your kids it's different things you're drinking and stuff like that, but it is colorful. It has kind of like a Pixar-like kind of vibe to it, and yeah, just sailing the seas with the family has been really fun. So they've added a lot of content to it. I don't know if that content's good or not, Charch, because the kids just don't want to do anything other than mess around in the game. They just want to kind of go on their own adventures, and the game allows that, which I think is fascinating, right? Like, you're not on a script. You can just go about and do what you want.
Interesting. It's been a nice success story for Microsoft. Sea of Thieves, we thought it might be dead. And, at some point, maybe next week, I want to talk about what we know about Rare's next project, Everwild, because it looks awesome.
I bet that'll probably be at that event on the 23rd.
Oh, I hope so, because it looks amazing. And